Did you know one of the world's most valuable historical maps spent centuries blocking a cold draft in a chimney? Yeah, really. And that kind of discovery happens more often than you'd think. From an ancient hunter's footprints that told us he was going as fast as an Olympic sprinter to a chemist who tried to extract gold from urine, today I'm going to tell you all about it. Ready? I'm Mike with List 25, and here are the 25 most mind-boggling and unexpected discoveries ever made. 25. The Ancient Human Footprints. There's a place in Mungo National Park, Australia, where early Aboriginal ancestors left behind one of the best accidental snapshots of daily life. 20,000 years ago, 5 hunters took off across the wet clay near an old lake. And one of them was running so fast that researchers later worked out that he was hitting about 23 meters per hour, or Olympic sprinter speeds, barefoot, on mud. That alone says plenty about how physically tough these communities were. What makes the site even better is everything else sitting around those tracks. The hundreds of footprints also include those of a child who made a line in the clay, probably while he was dragging a stick or something like that with him. You can even trace the path of a one-legged man who hopped his way across the same ground. Altogether, there are about 700 fossil footprints, with 400 of them grouped into 23 separate tracks. 24. Chameleon Vine. There's a vine in Chile that refuses to settle on a single look. The chameleon vine grows through the forest canopy, and wherever it lands, it copies whatever plant is nearby. Size, shape, color, even the veins running through the leaves, all of it adapts and changes to blend in with its new host. Researchers have always believed that the mimicry was just a trick of light or shadows. But in 2014, when scientists from the Universidad de Concepcion measured the leaves, it became clear that there was a whole lot more than light at play. What makes the chameleon vine even stranger is that it doesn't need to touch a plant to mimic it. It can hang beside a tree and still copy it, which suggests it responds to cues we don't fully understand yet. 23. An extraordinary map. People find old newspapers or loose coins in walls during renovations, but one family in Aberdeen, Scotland ended up with something far more impressive. When builders opened their chimney in 2016, they found a folded world map that someone wedged inside to stop a draft. It was printed in the mid-17th century, most likely by Jan Blauw, a Dutch cartographer whose work was prized across Europe. The map was soot-stained and brittle, but considering how long it sat above a fireplace, it was in remarkable shape. The owners did the smart thing and handed it over to the National Library of Scotland, where conservators began the slow, careful process of bringing it back to life. 22. The Mask of Warka. Long before the idea of a portrait became common, the Sumerians carved a woman's face in marble that was so lifelike, it still stops people in their tracks today. The Mask of Warka, also known as the Lady of Uruk, is from around 3100 BCE, and is thought to be the oldest realistic depiction of a human face ever found. It was discovered in 1939 in the ancient city of Uruk, in modern-day Iraq, and it once had inlaid eyes and decorations that made it even more impressive. The mask sat in the National Museum of Iraq for decades until the unrest of 2003, when looters emptied the building and the artifact disappeared. Months later, a joint recovery team eventually found it buried in a farmer's backyard near Baghdad. Despite everything it had been through, the mask was still intact, and it was returned to the museum. 21. Hennig Brand. In the 1660s, a German alchemist named Hennig Brand was convinced that gold could be pulled out of human urine. He was so committed to the idea that he collected roughly 5,678 liters of the stuff and spent months boiling, evaporating, and reboiling it in different combinations. Sadly, for Hennig at least, no gold ever appeared. But something much stranger did. Brand ended up with a glowing, waxy material that shone in the dark. He didn't know it at that exact moment, but he had stumbled upon phosphorus, the first element we ever discovered that was not already known from the ancient world. It was a huge moment for chemistry, even if his original hopes and dreams turned out to be wrong. 20. The Star of the South. In 1853, an enslaved girl named Rosa was washing sediment in Brazil's Bagheera River when she found a rough stone that seemed to shine in a very unusual way. Instead of hiding it, she gave it to her owner. He realized it was a diamond, but was probably just as shocked as everyone else when it turned out to weigh over 260 carats. In a rare move for that time, reports say that he freed Rosa immediately and set up a pension so that she could support herself comfortably for the rest of her life. The diamond took a very different path. It was cut down to about 128 carats and spent years passing through royal and noble collections in India before finally ending up with Cartier in Europe. 19. Pandoraviruses. Most viruses are so tiny that you need special equipment just to know they're there. But when Pandoraviruses were discovered in 2013, everything changed. These things are so big you can see them under a regular microscope. At about 1 micrometer long, they're closer in size to bacteria than to what we usually call a virus. Over 90% of their genes have no match to anything else on Earth. Not bacteria, not animals, not plants, or even other viruses. Nobody can say where they came from. And that uncertainty has opened up a can of worms and a fiery debate that hasn't been settled yet. Some researchers have suggested that Pandoraviruses might be leftovers from a completely different branch of life, something ancient that has mostly disappeared. Others call that hogwash. What everyone does agree on is that these viruses do not fit neatly into the categories we've been using for decades. 18. The King of Na's Gold Seal. One of Japan's most important archaeological discoveries came from a farmer who wasn't looking for anything of the sort. In 1784, while repairing an irrigation ditch on Shikanoshima Island, a man named Jinbei found a stone container with a small gold seal inside. The seal was less than 2.5 centimeters thick and wide, had a coiled serpent as a handle, and an inscription that showed that it was the official seal of the King of Na, a vassal of the Han Dynasty in 57 CE. Historians knew about this exchange from ancient Chinese records, but there was no physical evidence of the event until Jinbei discovered the seal. The seal was made of more than 95% pure gold, and it helped confirm that a local state, which had disappeared over 1,000 years before, really existed. It has since been donated to the Fukuoka City Museum, where it remains one of the most valuable artifacts in Japan. 17. The Living Fossil. The rediscovery of the coelacanth is one of those rare moments where science gets blindsided in the best way possible. It happened in 1938 when Marjorie Courtney Latimer, a museum curator in South Africa, went to check out an odd fish pulled up near the mouth of the Chalumna River. What she found was a 1.5 meter long blue mauve creature with thick scales and fins that looked more like limbs. She called every expert she could, but no one was available, and the museum had no interest in storing it. With the summer heat working against her, she ended up preserving it with the help of a local taxidermist who wrapped the whole thing in formaldehyde-soaked newspaper. Weeks later, ichthyologist James Smith saw her sketch, rushed to the museum, and immediately recognized it. It was a coelacanth, a species everyone believed had been extinct for about 70 million years. It was one of the greatest biological surprises of the century. 16. Movile Cave. Movile Cave is the kind of place you'd expect in a movie, not on a farm in Romania. It was uncovered by accident in 1986 when surveyors dug into a chamber that had been sealed for 5.5 million years. The air is full of carbon dioxide, methane, and hydrogen sulfide, with only about 1/3 as much oxygen as we're used to. Only a few scientists have been allowed to go inside, and they need special gear just to stay conscious. But the cave is bursting with life. Researchers have found over 100 new types of fungi and more than 50 animal species, many of them found nowhere else on Earth. The entire food chain runs on chemosynthetic bacteria that feed off hydrogen sulfide and methane coming from an underground lake as their energy source. Scientists are interested in the cave because it might be the best example on Earth of the conditions found on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus, where life could exist in the dark. 15. The near-extinction of the northern elephant seals. Northern elephant seals were once everywhere along the Pacific coast, but by the mid-1800s, they were hunted so heavily for their blubber that people assumed the species was gone. That changed in 1874, when a Smithsonian team arrived on Guadalupe Island in Mexico and discovered 8 seals still alive. You might expect this to be a happy discovery, but the scientists of that era decided to kill 7 of the seals to take them back as specimens for research. Only 1 was left alive. It's kind of hard to hear that part of the story today without shaking your head, but it reflects the era's approach to collecting. The one bit of good news is that the species managed to recover. Thanks to legal protection and conservation efforts, the northern elephant seal population is now in the hundreds of thousands. 14. The Siberian Diamond Crater. In the 70s, a team of Soviet geologists decided to take a look beneath a massive crater created by an asteroid impact 35 million years ago in Siberia and found one of the largest diamond deposits on Earth. I'm talking trillions of carats. Literally. The supply is so massive that it could, in theory at least, meet the world's insatiable demand for diamonds for thousands of years. The asteroid impact that formed the Popigai crater caused deep fractures in the ground. Kimberlite pipes pushed diamonds up through these cracks, leaving them unusually close to the surface. The discovery changed Russia's role in the global diamond industry almost overnight. 13. The Colonel's Manuscript. A 200-page food autobiography stayed hidden in KFC's archives for nearly 40 years, until an employee named Amy Sherwood found it in 2011. She immediately realized it was something special. In the manuscript, Sanders shares his own story, blending memories from his childhood on a Kentucky farm with the cooking lessons that influenced him long before KFC saw the light of day. When KFC's leaders read it, they actually called it a new secret from the Colonel. The book is packed with recipes, from casseroles and pies to a simple loaf of light bread, which was the first dish he learned to make. It also reveals how closely he connected food with hard work and daily life. 12. Bagheera Kiplingi. This little jumping spider might look ordinary, but it's actually an herbivore. Instead of hunting prey, it climbs along acacia branches and picks off Belchian bodies, which are small, nutrient-rich parts of the leaf. It even avoids the ants guarding Belchian bodies entirely. The spider quickly grabs what it needs and hops away before the ants see it. Researchers first noticed this spider in the early 2000s and double-checked their findings, since no other spider eats this way. Out of over 46,000 species, it is the only one with a plant-based diet. It still eats the occasional insect, but not enough to change the headlines. 11. The Porcini Surprise. You know those packets of dried porcini you buy for soups or risotto? A team from Kew Gardens in the UK opened up one in the London grocery store and found themselves facing an unexpected scientific discovery. They ran genetic tests on the mushrooms inside and found 15 different species mixed together, which is already more variety than most people expect. 3 of those species had never been named before. Not hiding in a rainforest, not buried in the ocean, but sitting on a store shelf waiting for dinner plans. It's a reminder of how huge the fungal world is and how little of it we've actually mapped. Scientists estimate there could be millions of species out there, and even the food industry can't always tell you exactly what ends up in the mix. 10. The Adélie Notes written in Greek. In 1911, George Murray Levick was studying an Adélie penguin colony when he noticed things that people in Edwardian Britain had no words for. He saw same-sex pairings, non-reproductive mating, and even some behaviors involving dead birds. Levick continued to observe and take notes, soon realizing he had discovered one of the messier sides of animal behavior. He knew his findings wouldn't be accepted in polite society, so he wrote the details in Greek and shared them only with a few scientists. The notes were forgotten for over 100 years. When they were finally reviewed and published in 2012, biologists were not as surprised. Today, what Levick described is seen as normal variation in animal behavior, and his notebook turned into an important early record of it. 9. The Herxheim Archaeological Site. Herxheim, in southwest Germany, is one of those sites that forced archaeologists to sit down for a minute. It used to be home to a Neolithic community about 5000 BCE, and what they left behind is nothing like the peaceful village image most of us have in our heads. The pits there hold the remains of over 500 people, and the bones all tell the same story. The victims' arms and legs were taken apart, the soft tissue was removed, marrow was collected, and skulls were disfigured. The bones were mixed with broken pottery and animal pieces. Researchers eventually agreed that this wasn't random violence at all, but a repeated ritual that involved cannibalism carried out by a culture we still know nothing about. 8. Asperger's difficult history. Hans Asperger's name ended up attached to a part of the autism spectrum, but his story is terribly complicated. In the early 40s, he described children who had trouble with social skills but were strong in language or problem solving. As the years went by, others linked his work to the terms high and low functioning autism, something that is now widely challenged. But his history is hard to judge because of the time he lived in. During the Nazi era, disabled children were targeted by a euthanasia program, and researchers have spent years sorting out Asperger's role in that system. Some evidence shows he tried to protect some of the children by focusing on their strengths. According to other records, he was involved in decisions that sent severely disabled children to places where they were killed. The information that remains doesn't line up cleanly, making it impossible to paint him as one thing or the other. 7. Charles Henry Turner. Charles Henry Turner dedicated his career to studying animals that most scientists ignored, and he kept discovering surprising things about them. He earned his PhD in 1907, becoming one of the first Black Americans to do so, and still had to fight for lab space, funding, and basic recognition. Despite these challenges, Turner showed that insects respond to pitch, proving they could hear things people thought they couldn't. He also watched cockroaches solve simple problems, showing their behavior was more than just automatic reflex. And his honeybee work changed everything. He discovered that they could see color and make decisions based on it, decades before insect cognition became a serious field. In fact, a lot of modern research on how animals learn traces back to the questions he asked while working with almost no support. 6. The fish with night vision. Deep-sea dragonfish look like they were made to scare divers, but their eyes are even weirder than their teeth. Scientists have discovered that these fish use a molecule related to chlorophyll, the same stuff plants rely on for photosynthesis. This compound helps them see far-red light, a part of the spectrum that most deep-sea animals can't detect. So, dragonfish can spot bioluminescent signals that other creatures miss. The moment that detail became public, defense researchers took a closer look, since any hint of improved night vision tends to, attract them. And the popular version of the story turned into eye drops that give humans supervision. The truth, however, is much less dramatic. The research stayed experimental and focused on understanding the biology, not making a product. 5. From skin cells to sight. Researchers at Osaka University demonstrated what is possible when stem cell science and developmental biology work together. They took adult skin cells, turned them back into early stem cells, and guided them to develop as they would while forming an eye in an embryo. The cells did the rest. They formed layered structures with retinas, corneas, lenses, and other parts of the optic system, arranged pretty much the same way they would be in natural development. so researchers could observe the minuscule interactions that are impossible when each part is grown separately, an approach that gave them new insights into how eye disorders develop and ideas about future treatments to repair or replace damaged tissue, rather than only slowing down the decline. 4. Nature's Master Blueprint. Walter Gehring spent years asking a basic question: how does an embryo know where to put everything? While studying that process, he found a tiny stretch of DNA now called a homeobox. It works like a set of early instructions that tells cells what they should become and where they should go. The shock came later, when scientists realized that the same instructions show up in all kinds of living things. Fruit flies have it. Mice have it. We have it too. Even some fungi use it. This means all these different organisms start with the same basic blueprint. It's strong evidence that complex life on Earth shares a common ancestor, rather than creating new body plans from nothing each time. For biologists, it became one of the clearest examples of how connected we all are at the genetic level. 3. The DEC2 Mutation. Every group of friends has at least one person who seems fine on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And scientists finally found the genetic reason for it. A team at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia studied 100 pairs of twins and identified a rare variant of the BHLH-E41 gene, also called DEC2. One twin in the study carried the mutation and slept just over 5 hours a night, while his brother, who didn't have the mutation, needed more than an hour extra. The difference didn't stop at sleep time. During 38 hours without rest, the twin with the mutation stayed sharper and had far fewer performance lapses. Even the recovery sleep was shorter. Some people are truly built to need less sleep than the rest of us. The rest of you, I don't need much. Maybe I have this. I gotta check this out. I can literally do 3 hours and be fine. 3 hours of sleep, then like 12 hours at Disney. I'm good. 2. The palm that flowers itself to death. There's a palm in Madagascar with a nickname that needs an asterisk for YouTube's sake, so I'm just not going to say it. But the biology behind it is incredible. The tree grows steadily for decades, building up resources without too much drama. Then, it hits the final stage of its life and spends everything it has on one spectacular flowering event. The crown becomes packed with nectar-rich blossoms, drawing in every pollinator in the area and producing a massive load of seeds all at once. That burst of energy drains the plant completely, and it dies shortly after. 1. Disordered hyperuniformity. In 2014, researchers from Princeton University and Washington University in St. Louis were studying how birds see color when they noticed something odd about the way cone cells were arranged. The pattern wasn't random, but it wasn't perfectly ordered either. Still, the cells were spread out with surprising consistency. They called this arrangement disordered hyperuniformity. Up close, everything looks scattered, but over larger distances, there's an almost perfect balance. This setup reduces visual noise and helps the eye pick up clearer color signals. The surprising part wasn't just that chickens use this system, it was that this structure had never been found in living tissue before. Scientists immediately started exploring whether this mix of order and randomness could inspire new optical materials, and it kicked off a wave of research in photonics and engineering. And that's that. I am just gonna go stare at a wall for a minute and process all of this. If I earned it, drop a like and subscribe with that notification bell so this video doesn't disappear into the algorithm's black hole. But if you're not quite done yet and would like to spend a few more minutes with me, our related video is 25 mysterious discoveries that science still can't explain. Forget the usual tales of the wow signal or the Antikythera mechanism. You've already heard about those. Trust me, it is the perfect follow-up. That video should be popping up right about here. Like I said, as always, like, share, comment, subscribe, notification bell. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.